Good day, everyone, and welcome to your Bitcoin show, Bitcoin Report. Today is the 30th of January, 2020. Thank you guys for tuning in. Really appreciate you guys being here. Now let's talk. Let's talk about what's going on. There's a virus going on, and it's not going to go away. And, this is in China, and, I'm going to tell you what happened today. The World Health Organization announced that this is a global emergency. And as soon as I was watching the stock market, it was down. As soon as they announced that this was a global emergency, the stock market went up. And not a small amount, it went up quite a bit. To close out, I think it was like 125 points it went up when they announced that this was a global emergency. Let's take a look at how this is going to affect Bitcoin, how it could affect Bitcoin. I'm not going to say how it will. It was a slip of the tongue, but how it could affect Bitcoin. Let's go to this article right here. Let's open up the charts right here and take a look at this article. This is from the South China Morning Post. The Chinese team, have a model to predict this virus. The team's model predicted the number of infections in 5 mainland megacities: Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, and Chong. Honest to goodness, some Chinese names really are tricky for me to pronounce. But anyway, there's 5 big cities there. And that's what they're modeling. They're just modeling how the virus is going to be in a few months in those cities. They're saying that the virus is going to peak in those cities in April or late April or early May. And then basically it's going to start to settle back down again. Well, the reason why it's going to settle back down again is because everybody will have had it in those cities. But you know what they're saying here? They're saying it would peak in late April and early May, and at the height of the epidemic, as many as 150,000 new cases would be confirmed every single day. Imagine that. 150,000 just in those 5 cities in China. Just in 5 cities. What about the rest of the world? Is the virus just going to stay in those 5 cities? Something as contagious as this? This is going to have a profound effect upon the world economy. And, it really stuns me. I was expecting when the World Health Organization would announce that it's a global threat, a global emergency, that the stock market would fall 400 or 500 points. The stock market went up. They're living in La La Land. I don't know what planet they're living on, Jupiter or Pluto. This is planet Earth. Hey, stock market guys, come back down to Earth. Well, guess what, guys? I'm afraid they are going to come back down to Earth with a crash. It's going to suddenly dawn on them at some point in time. It's going to dawn on them that China is systematically closing down. As this virus moves into new cities in China, China is shutting down. Shutting down. One of the biggest economies on earth is shutting down. The stock market's going up. Are we in bizarro land? I mean, what is this? This is crazy. But, it's going to, at some point, they're going to realize the impact on this, the impact of the global economy on this. And investors are going to panic. Well, when investors panic, the money that they have to shuffle around, this funny money that's in the system, that they call a dollar, this funny money, when investors panic, they're going to be looking for some place to put all that funny money. Right? Well, they've been shoving it into U.S. bonds. But, when the stock market falls, the Fed is going to come in and they are going to go back to some sort of monetary stimulus like we've never seen before. The Fed's going to go crazy with printing money. And at that point in time, this is going to be the start of the Great Print. Because they have to save the economy. This is the only tool they have. They're going to use it. They're going to use it. If the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And the only tool they have is money printing. So, I mean, it's a no-brainer what they're going to do. They're going to print the dollar to infinity and beyond. Just like Buzz Lightyear, to infinity and beyond. That's how they're going to print up the dollar. And so those treasury bonds, that they all been rushing into, they can rush out just as quick. So where are they going to go? Gold and silver haven't been catching a bid. The only thing that's really been catching a bid quite nicely over the last few days and making really nice substantial gains is cryptocurrency. If cryptocurrency keeps making these gains, and right now at this point in time, there's no reason at all to be bearish about cryptocurrency. The bears right now are starting to shut up. They're finally starting to shut up. Okay? If this continues bearish over the next few weeks, and the crisis really starts to unfold, all of these mainstream investors might start flocking into cryptocurrency. And if the higher it goes, the higher it's going to go. Because there's no upper limit to how high cryptocurrency can go. It's a great place to shove money. Massive amounts of money. And it just goes higher. And the higher it goes, I mean, what's the limit? What's the limit to it? What's the limit to the price of a Bitcoin? What is a low price for a Bitcoin? Well, when Bitcoin hit $20,000 last time, and it fell off to 18, people were saying, gee, that's a good cheap Bitcoin. When it fell down to 13, they're saying that's a cheap Bitcoin compared to 20,000. Well, if it goes up to 100,000 and it falls off to 80,000, they'll be still saying that's a cheap Bitcoin at 80,000. It's all in your head. I mean, it's a commodity. Bitcoin is a commodity where there's no real price gauge for it. It can go to any level high. It doesn't matter. Because the way it's designed, one Bitcoin, has millions and millions of Satoshis, which are small individual monetary units. And if they wanted to, they could even extend the decimal point out further than 8, 8 zeros on a Bitcoin. They could extend it out 17, 21 decimal points, and that just increases the amount of Satoshis. And so they might have to do that at the end. If Bitcoin gets too high in price, they might have to extend the decimal point out and that will make one Satoshi, what's one Satoshi now, will become maybe 1,000 Satoshis or 1,000,000 Satoshis. And so what we've been paying for transactions on the Bitcoin network, just for a transaction right now is only worth like, what, $1 or something like that? That might be worth $1,000 or $10,000. Just that transaction fee. And so, I mean, there's no limit. The amount of money that the Fed can create, and they just get into this mode of creating money, and that's what they're going to do, because that's the only tool in their toolbox. They're going to hyperinflate the dollar, and when they do that, how much is a Bitcoin worth? It's just going to go up higher and higher and higher in reflection of a hyperinflating dollar. And so, ultimately, in the end, I mean, these guys that make these Bitcoin price predictions, you've all heard these Bitcoin price predictions. Well, when the dollar meets its final demise, what could a Bitcoin be worth in dollars? The sky's the limit, guys. And so, here we go. We got this crisis that's unfolding. I can't see it going backwards at this point. I can't see all of a sudden. It would take a miracle for all these people suddenly to start getting better and for this virus to stop spreading. It's spreading, and I got the figures today. According to the figures, every 6.2 days, it's doubling in size. The only big question now is how many countries are going to get infected? That's a big question mark at this point in time. But this thing, from what I understand, is twice as contagious as the ordinary flu. Twice as contagious as the flu. And you know how hard it is to stop from catching the flu? If you go into an office and one guy's got the flu, everybody's going to get it. Well, I mean, right now, what are they fighting this thing with? What's the big thing they tell you? Wash your hands. Yeah, I mean, this is airborne. This thing can even make its way through a mask if it's not exactly the right kind of mask. You see all these people wearing these cloth masks, Well, they measure germ particles and stuff in something called microns. Well, these cloth masks are not the right micron level to stop anything that's a contagion. Plus, they leak all around the edges and everything else. Then they have these higher quality masks, N95 or whatever it's called, But you have to make sure you have to have it specially fitted because it leaks around the edges. And so our measures to try to stop and contain this thing is limited at best, I mean, to really stop and contain this thing, you need rooms that are negative pressure. A negative pressurized room, with a special filter it works basically like they suck the air out of the room, and it has to be filtered before that even goes outside. It has to run through some sort of a burner or something to kill all the bacteria. And we don't have rooms like that and stuff. We're not using effective tools to fight something that is hidden and unseen and floating in the air, And so, if you expect this thing to go away, it's going to get worse. Investors could see this crisis as a panic move out of dollars or whatever and into some other asset class, and because the Fed is going to go crazy with printing money, because that's the only thing that they can do to try to keep the economy held together when they see that China basically when they have to say, hey, we've just lost China. I mean, during the last crisis of 2008, who got us out of the crisis was China. China built ghost cities, and they made infrastructure projects. You don't count on them for anything this time. This time they're going to be in such a crisis themselves. They're not going to be able to help anybody else. And so it's all going to be down to the Fed this time. And what's the Fed going to do? They're going to print. They are going to print the dollar into dust. And there's not very many places to go other than dollars. If you buy treasuries, you're buying dollars. The only 3 ways out of the dollar: gold, silver, and crypto. And I think all 3 are going to catch an enormous bid. But, crypto, if it's moving up better than gold and silver, it could catch the biggest bid of the 3. Listen, thank you guys for listening. I know I rattled on a little bit long, but this is serious business. We'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye, and give me a thumbs up. Bye-bye, guys.